John Harper had lived on the dusty ranch for nearly his entire life. The land stretched for miles, a patchwork of golden fields, worn fences, and quiet grazing pastures. The wind carried the smell of dry grass and animals, a scent that had become as familiar to John as his own heartbeat. He was a man of routine, rising with the sun, checking the fences, feeding the cattle, and tending to the small orchard near the house. Life had been predictable, even lonely, ever since his wife passed many years ago. His days were quiet, filled with the hum of chores and the gentle company of memories. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long orange and pink streaks across the sky, John decided to check the far end of the ranch. The fences there had always been weak, threatened by the occasional storm or wandering cattle from neighboring lands. As he walked along the uneven path, his boots crunching on the dry dirt, he noticed something unusual. A faint sound, almost a whisper, came from the old shed near the barn. At first, John thought it was the wind playing tricks on him. The shed was a place he rarely visited. Its wooden walls had grown old and creaky over the years, and the door hung uneven on its hinges. The sound came again. A soft, almost pleading cry. John froze for a moment, listening carefully. His heart skipped a beat. It was not the wind. It was someone calling out for help. Cautiously, John approached the shed. He pushed open the door, which groaned loudly in protest. Inside, the shadows seemed deeper than usual, and the smell of damp wood and dust filled the air. And then he saw her, a young girl, barely in her teens, with long blonde hair that hung in tangled strands around her face. Her clothes were worn and dirty, and her small hands were bound with thick rope. She looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes, and her lips trembled as she whispered, "Please, only you can save me from death." John felt a shock run through his body. His mind raced. Who had done this? How long had she been there? And most importantly, what could he do to help her? Despite the fear that tightened his chest, he stepped forward slowly, keeping his voice calm. "It's okay. I'm here to help. You're safe now." The girl flinched at his words, as if she had never heard kindness before. She tried to speak, but only a soft sob escaped. John quickly untied the ropes around her wrists, careful not to hurt her further. Her hands were raw and bruised from the bindings. She rubbed them gently, staring at him with a mix of fear and disbelief. I don't understand," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Why? Why would anyone do this?" John shook his head slowly. "I don't know. But you don't have to worry anymore. You're safe here." For a moment, the girl just sat there, shivering in the corner of the shed. John glanced around, realizing the conditions in which she had been kept. There were remnants of food, a few stale pieces of bread, and an old, torn blanket. The place was cold, dark, and unwelcoming, a stark contrast to the warmth and safety of John's ranch. He knew that she had suffered, perhaps for a long time. The sight filled him with anger, but also a deep sense of responsibility. He had to make sure she was protected. Carefully, John helped the girl to her feet. She was weak, her legs trembling as they carried her out of the shed and toward the main house. The ranch house was modest but sturdy, filled with the comforting smell of old wood and cooking fires. John led her to a small guest room he had kept for visitors, placing a soft blanket on the bed. "You can rest here. Eat something if you want. I'll make sure no one harms you," he said. The girl, still shaking, slowly nodded. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at John as if trying to memorize his face, as though he were her last hope in a world that had offered her none. "My name is Emily," she whispered. They sold me." John's stomach tightened. Sold? The word echoed in his mind. He had heard rumors of criminal gangs operating in nearby towns, exploiting vulnerable people, but he had never imagined it would come to his quiet ranch. His heart ached for Emily, for the pain she must have endured. "I'm so sorry, Emily. That's awful," he said softly. "But you don't have to worry now. You're safe here with me." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She had been taught not to trust anyone, to fear strangers, but there was something in John's calm, steady presence that made her want to believe him. Slowly, she began to eat the small meal he brought her, a simple plate of bread, cheese, and water. She ate hungrily, as if she had not had a proper meal in days, maybe weeks. John watched her carefully, silently vowing to protect her at all costs. As night fell, the ranch grew quiet. The stars twinkled above, and the soft sounds of cattle and wind filled the air. Emily lay in the small bed, exhausted, and John sat nearby, keeping watch. He thought about the dangers that might come, about the people who had done this to her, and about how he would keep her safe. For the first time in years, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This girl's life depended on him, and he would not fail her. The hours passed slowly, and Emily eventually fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. John remained awake, listening to the quiet night, planning the next steps. He knew he had to be careful. The people who had sold Emily would likely come looking for her, and he could not risk their finding her here. He thought about contacting someone he could trust, someone in law enforcement who could help. But for now, he focused on the immediate need, keeping Emily safe through the night. By morning, the sun's golden light spilled into the room, warming the wooden floor and the small bed where Emily lay. She awoke slowly, her eyes meeting John's with a mixture of fear and cautious hope. "Thank you for saving me," she said quietly. John smiled gently, feeling the weight of her words. "You don't have to thank me yet. We have a lot to do to make sure you're completely safe," he replied. Throughout that day, John made small changes around the ranch. He repaired the locks on the gates, hid any trace of Emily's presence from the outside world, and prepared more food. He talked to her gently, trying to learn her story in small pieces. Emily spoke cautiously, revealing the horrors of being sold, the fear, and the constant worry for her life. John listened without judgment, offering comfort whenever he could. By evening, they had established a fragile sense of routine. Emily began to trust John, seeing him not only as a protector, but as someone who genuinely cared for her well-being. John, in turn, felt a deep connection to Emily. She reminded him of his own daughter, lost so many years ago, and he could not help but feel a fierce determination to ensure she survived. Though the shadow of danger still loomed, for the first time, both John and Emily allowed themselves a small sense of hope. In the quiet of the ranch, amidst the wind and the rustling trees, a bond formed, a promise of safety, trust, and the beginning of a fight for freedom. John knew the journey ahead would not be easy, but in that moment, he resolved to do everything in his power to protect the girl who had called out to him in the darkness, the girl who had placed her life in his hands. And so, in the heart of that remote ranch, under the fading light of a setting sun, the story of John and Emily began, a story of courage, compassion, and the fight to save a life from the shadows of cruelty. The morning sun bathed the ranch in a soft, golden light, and for the first time in weeks, Emily felt a small sense of safety. She still trembled when she moved, her muscles stiff from days of confinement, but the warmth of the house and the calm presence of John Harper gave her a sense of security she had never known. The ranch, with its wide-open fields and gentle animals, seemed almost magical after the darkness she had lived in. John moved quietly around the house, preparing breakfast. The smell of frying eggs and freshly baked bread filled the air, and Emily, though still cautious, sat at the small wooden table. She watched him, unsure of what to say. The words she wanted to speak caught in her throat. It was strange, she thought, to feel safe with someone she had just met, but the kindness in his eyes told her that he would not harm her. John placed a plate of food in front of her. "Eat, Emily. You need your strength," he said gently. She nodded and began eating slowly, savoring the taste of food that was warm and plentiful, unlike the meager scraps she had been given before. As she ate, she looked around the room and noticed small details: the family photos on the wall, the neat arrangement of furniture, the softness of the blankets. Everything spoke of care and stability, and she realized she had never known such things could exist. After breakfast, John suggested they take a walk around the ranch. The fresh air and open space were good for Emily's body and mind. She hesitated at first, afraid of leaving the safety of the house, but John stayed close, guiding her gently. As they walked along the fence line, Emily began to talk, her voice soft but growing stronger with each word. She told John about the family she had left behind, about the cruel people who had taken her, and about the constant fear she had lived in. John listened quietly, never interrupting, letting her tell her story in her own time. It wasn't just one person, Emily said, tears brimming in her eyes. There were many. They didn't care about anything. Only money. I tried to escape, but they punished me. She stopped, choking back sobs. John put a steady hand on her shoulder. You're safe now. No one can hurt you here, he said firmly. Emily looked at him, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe it. John knew that simply providing food and shelter was not enough. Emily had suffered more than most could imagine, and the emotional scars ran deep. He wanted her to feel secure. Not just physically, but emotionally. He spent the day helping her clean and organize her small room, bringing in fresh sheets and blankets. He made her a small corner for her personal belongings, a place where she could feel a sense of ownership and independence. It was a simple act, but it gave Emily a sense of normalcy she had never experienced before. The day passed slowly, filled with small tasks and quiet conversations. John shared stories of the ranch, of the animals, and of the life he had lived. He didn't speak of himself too much, letting Emily take the center of the conversation. She began to ask questions, curious about the land, the animals, and the routines that had become part of John's life. Each answer, each story, slowly chipped away at the walls she had built around herself. In the evening, John brought Emily to the barn, showing her the animals he cared for. The cows, horses, and chickens were calm and gentle, and Emily found herself smiling as she watched them move about. John showed her how to feed the chickens and brush the horses. Her hands were stiff at first, but the simple, repetitive tasks helped her feel connected to the world again. For the first time, she felt useful, capable, and part of something larger than her fear. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the fields, John and Emily returned to the house. The warmth of the fire in the hearth made the room glow, and Emily sat quietly, staring into the flames. John watched her for a moment, noticing the change in her posture, the way her eyes no longer darted constantly, as if expecting danger. She was beginning to relax, to trust that she was safe, but John knew the danger had not passed. The people who had sold Emily were still out there, and they would come looking for her. He could not allow his guard to slip, even for a moment. That night, he sat by the window, keeping watch as Emily slept. Every shadow and sound made him tense, but he remained calm on the outside, knowing that panic would only frighten her. He thought about the steps he would need to take to protect her, about who he could trust, and about how to ensure that the people who had harmed her would be brought to justice. Over the next few days, John established a routine for Emily. She would help with chores around the ranch, feeding the animals, collecting eggs, and tending to the small garden. The physical work helped her regain strength, and the sense of purpose gave her something to focus on besides fear. John made sure to praise her efforts, encouraging her when she struggled and celebrating small victories. Slowly, Emily began to smile more, laugh occasionally, and even joke with John. The light in her eyes, though still cautious, began to return. John also took steps to protect the ranch. He repaired the fences, installed locks on the gates, and kept watch for any strangers in the area. He thought carefully about how to handle the people who had sold Emily. He did not want to confront them alone, knowing they were dangerous. But he also could not let Emily remain in fear indefinitely. He began discreetly reaching out to a trusted friend in law enforcement, someone he knew would understand the situation and provide assistance without causing unnecessary attention. Emily's trust in John grew with each passing day. She began to share more about herself, about the dreams she had before her life had been taken from her, about the things she loved and wanted to experience. John listened carefully, encouraging her to hold on to hope. He told her that she was not alone, that there were people who cared about her, and that she had the right to a life free from fear. These words, simple as they were, gave Emily a strength she had almost forgotten she possessed. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars, Emily spoke softly. "I never thought anyone would care. Not like this. You've given me hope." John looked at her, his eyes reflecting both sadness for what she had endured and determination to protect her. "Everyone deserves hope, Emily, and you're going to have yours. I promise." The bond between them deepened, built on trust, care, and the shared understanding of fear and survival. John felt a renewed sense of purpose. Emily was more than someone he needed to protect. She was a reminder of the goodness that still existed in the world, of the power of kindness and courage. And Emily, for the first time in her life, began to believe that she could be more than a victim. She could be free, she could be safe, and she could have a future. But the danger was never far away. The shadow of the people who had sold her loomed over them both, a reminder that their peace could be shattered at any moment. John began to teach Emily how to be aware, how to stay safe, and how to trust her instincts. He wanted her to be prepared, not just physically but mentally, for the challenges ahead. Together, they planned for any situation, discussing what to do if strangers came to the ranch, how to hide, and how to signal for help. Through it all, Emily grew stronger. She learned to move with confidence, to speak with clarity, and to face her fears rather than hide from them. John watched her transformation with pride, knowing that the courage she had shown in surviving her past was now being channeled into building a new life. He also felt the weight of responsibility more than ever, realizing that the safety and well-being of this young girl depended entirely on him. Days turned into weeks, and a new rhythm settled over the ranch. Emily began to laugh more freely, to tend the garden with care, and to explore the fields without fear. John felt a sense of accomplishment and relief. But he never let his guard down. The outside world could be cruel, and the people who had taken Emily would not give up easily. But for now, they had a haven, a place where Emily could heal, where she could be herself, and where John could ensure her safety. The trust and bond they shared became the foundation for the next steps in Emily's journey. John knew that protection was only the beginning. They would need to confront the past and secure a future where Emily could live freely. But at this moment, in the quiet of the ranch, surrounded by the soft sounds of animals and the gentle rustle of the wind, Emily felt alive in a way she had never known. She had been given a second chance, and with John by her side, she was determined to make the most of it. And so, life on the ranch continued. A delicate balance of routine, healing, and preparation. Emily learned to trust again, to hope again, and to believe that there was a world beyond fear. John, in turn, found purpose, courage, and connection in his role as protector. Together, they began a journey that would test their strength, resilience, and humanity. But for now, in the safety of the ranch, they simply existed, healing from the past and preparing for the battles yet to come, to move quietly and watch for danger without panicking. They practiced signals, escape routes, and hiding places. Though tense, the exercises gave Emily a sense of control, a feeling she had not experienced since before her capture. One evening, as the sky turned shades of pink and orange, a sound broke the quiet of the ranch, a vehicle approaching. John's heart raced. He and Emily had been cautious, but the reality of confrontation had arrived. John motioned for Emily to hide in a small room he had prepared with blankets and supplies. She slipped inside, her hands trembling, but trusting John completely. John moved toward the front of the house, keeping low and quiet. The vehicle slowed near the gate, and 3 men stepped out. They were rough-looking, their eyes scanning the area, and John immediately recognized the type members of the gang that had sold Emily. He had no weapon, No help nearby. Only his wits and knowledge of the land, but he refused to give in to fear. He could not let Emily see panic in his eyes. He waited for the right moment, then quietly closed the gate behind him, using it as a barrier to slow their approach. The men began calling out, demanding to know where the girl was. John responded firmly, his voice steady despite the tension. "You're looking in the wrong place. There's no one here." The men laughed, a cruel sound that made Emily shiver from her hiding place. They spread out, searching the property. But John knew the ranch better than they did. He moved silently, leading them away from the house whenever possible. Emily, watching through a small crack in the door, realized the danger was real. Her heart pounded, but she also felt a strange sense of hope. John was clever. He could protect her. Hours passed in a tense game of cat and mouse. The men were determined, but John's knowledge of the ranch gave him the advantage. He used narrow paths, hidden trails, and sudden noises to mislead them. At one point, he lured them into a shallow ditch near the creek, buying time for Emily to remain safe inside. She listened to the distant shouting and movement, her fear mingling with admiration for the man who had saved her once and was now saving her again. Eventually, the men grew frustrated. They had not found Emily, and the sun was beginning to set. John knew he could not allow them to linger. He waited until the last light of day, then quietly moved to open a small side gate, allowing the vehicle to leave the property unnoticed. The men, thinking the area was clear, drove off, muttering threats under their breath. Emily emerged from her hiding place, shaking but unharmed. John embraced her briefly, speaking softly, "You're safe. They're gone for now." She had seen the danger firsthand, but she had also seen John's bravery and quick thinking. In that moment, she knew that he would do everything possible to protect her. The next morning, John made a decision. They could not wait for another attack. The gang was determined, and they would return. It was time to involve someone who could help legally. John contacted his friend, Sheriff Reynolds, a man he had known for years and trusted completely. He explained the situation, the danger Emily faced, and the need for discretion to avoid tipping off the gang. Sheriff Reynolds promised immediate action, and a plan was set to bring Emily to a safe location under police protection. While waiting for the authorities, John and Emily continued their preparations. Emily learned more about staying aware and moving cautiously, and John focused on ensuring that the ranch would remain secure. They practiced quietly, signaling each other, preparing for any unexpected situation. Emily's confidence grew with each passing day. Though the memory of the men who had taken her never left her mind, she knew she had survived once because of John's courage, and she trusted him to guide her through the next steps. One afternoon, John and Emily walked along the creek near the edge of the property. The water flowed gently, reflecting the sunlight in shimmering patterns. Emily paused, looking at John. "I never thought I could feel safe like this," she said softly. "I didn't know someone could care so much." John smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "People do care, Emily. And some will risk everything to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The days passed, and the plan to move Emily into police protection grew closer. John knew it would not be easy. The gang could be watching, and any mistake could put her in danger. But he also knew it was necessary. Emily's safety depended on moving beyond the ranch, and he had to trust the authorities he had chosen. The night before the planned move, John and Emily sat together on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one. The ranch was quiet, filled with the gentle sounds of animals settling for the night. Emily leaned against John, feeling the comfort of his presence. "I don't want to leave this place," she said softly. "It feels safe." John nodded. "I know. But the world outside can be dangerous, and we must make sure you are protected. This is just the next step. Thanks. Thanks for watching. This is just the next step." The morning came, and with it, a convoy of police vehicles arrived quietly at the ranch. John guided Emily through the side gate, avoiding the main roads to prevent any notice. Sheriff Reynolds and his team had prepared a safe route, and Emily felt a mix of fear and hope as she climbed into the car. John followed closely, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of trouble. As they drove away, Emily looked back at the ranch, the place that had given her hope, safety, and a chance to heal. She turned to John, her eyes filled with gratitude and trust. "Thank you," she whispered. John smiled, a mix of pride and relief washing over him. "You're stronger than you know, Emily. And now, you'll be safe. Truly safe." During the journey, Emily reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the fear, the darkness, and the despair, and compared it to the strength, hope, and courage she felt now. She realized that she had survived because of John's bravery, his quick thinking, and his unwavering determination to protect her. And she understood that this was not just a story of survival, it was a story of courage, trust, and the power of human kindness. By the time they reached the safe house prepared by the authorities, Emily felt a renewed sense of hope. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy. She would have to face her past, heal from the trauma, and rebuild her life, but she also knew she was not alone. John had shown her what it meant to be protected, to be cared for, and to trust again. She was ready to face the future, no longer a victim, but a survivor with the courage to move forward. And John, watching her step into the safe house with confidence, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and through it all, he had kept his promise. Emily was safe, and for him, that was the greatest reward. Though the battle was not yet over, the first victory had been won, a victory of courage, of trust, and of the human spirit standing strong against darkness. High fences, and guarded by people who clearly knew how to protect her. The walls, painted in soft, welcoming colors, and the neatly kept garden, gave her a strange sense of calm. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt that she could finally breathe without fear. The journey to safety had been tense, filled with moments of doubt and worry. But now, it seemed real. She was free at least, for now. John Harper followed closely, his eyes scanning the surroundings. Even here, he felt the weight of responsibility. He had brought Emily to safety, but he knew that true freedom meant she would need support, healing, and protection for the days and weeks ahead. He could not stay in the safe house indefinitely, but he could ensure that she had people who would look after her. Sheriff Reynolds met them at the gate, a reassuring figure who had been part of the plan from the beginning. "Emily," the sheriff said gently, "you are safe now. No one can hurt you here. You're going to stay with us for a while until it's safe for you to start rebuilding your life." Emily nodded, a mixture of relief and exhaustion washing over her. Her hands, still trembling slightly, clutched John's arm. "Thank you. For everything," she whispered. John smiled, feeling the deep sense of fulfillment that comes from keeping a promise. "You did all the hard work, Emily. I just helped you get here." Inside the safe house, Emily was shown to a small room that had been prepared for her. The bed was soft, with clean sheets, and a few personal items were waiting for her. For the first time, she could lie down and relax without fear of being discovered. She sank onto the bed and let herself feel the exhaustion of the past weeks. Her body ached, her mind was still foggy with memories, but for the first time, there was no immediate danger pressing down on her. John stayed with her for a while, helping her settle in, making sure she had everything she needed. "You're safe, Emily. Sleep if you need to," he said. Emily nodded, and as John left the room, she closed her eyes, feeling a strange mixture of relief, sadness, and hope. She had survived horrors she never wanted to remember. But now she had a chance to start over, to heal, and to build a life free from fear. In the days that followed, the safe house became Emily's new world. She met counselors and social workers who specialized in helping survivors of abuse. They spoke to her gently, listened to her story without judgment, and encouraged her to express her feelings in her own way. Slowly, Emily began to open up, telling them about the fear, the loneliness, and the cruelty she had experienced. It was painful, but each word she spoke lifted a little weight off her shoulders. John visited whenever he could, checking on her progress and offering support. Emily always felt comforted by his presence, knowing that someone who cared deeply for her was still watching over her. He encouraged her to regain her confidence, to remember that she was strong and capable, and to focus on the future instead of the past. Emily absorbed his words, realizing that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it. As weeks passed, Emily began to experience small victories. She could walk outside without fear, talk to other people without anxiety, and even smile without hesitation. John watched these changes with pride. He remembered the terrified girl he had first found in the shed, and now she was transforming into a young woman who carried herself with quiet strength. Each small step forward was a triumph over the darkness that had once consumed her life. Sheriff Reynolds worked diligently to dismantle the gang that had harmed Emily. Police raids led to the arrest of several members, while others fled, knowing that their crimes had caught up with them. Emily's story became part of the legal case, but she was shielded from the public eye, her identity protected, to ensure she could continue healing in peace. John felt relieved knowing that justice was being served, though he also understood that the journey toward emotional freedom was just beginning for Emily. One afternoon, Emily and John sat together in the garden. The sun was warm, birds chirped nearby, and the gentle rustle of the wind in the trees brought a sense of serenity. Emily looked at John, her eyes reflecting gratitude and admiration. "I never thought I could feel this safe," she said softly. "You saved my life. And not just once, but every day since then." John smiled, his eyes filled with a mix of pride and emotion. "You saved yourself too, Emily. You survived everything they did to you. I only helped guide you." Emily nodded, understanding the truth in his words. She realized that while John had been her protector, she had also found strength within herself that she had never known existed. Her courage, resilience, and determination had allowed her to endure unimaginable pain and still move forward. She had learned that survival was not just about escaping danger, but about reclaiming her life piece by piece, moment by moment. Over time, Emily began to think about the future. She dreamed of going to school again, learning new skills, and perhaps even helping others who had suffered as she had. John encouraged these dreams, reminding her that she had the power to shape her own path. Each day, Emily grew stronger, more confident, and more determined to live a life filled with purpose, free from fear. One evening, as they watched the sunset together from the porch of the safe house, Emily spoke quietly. "I don't know how to thank you enough. You risked so much for me, for a stranger." John shook his head gently. "I didn't see you as a stranger. I saw someone who needed help, and I couldn't turn away. Sometimes doing the right thing is the only choice you have." Emily smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'll never forget you," she said. John nodded, feeling a deep sense of connection. "And I'll never forget you, Emily. You remind me why kindness and courage matter." As the weeks turned into months, Emily continued to rebuild her life. She attended school, made friends, and slowly reconnected with the world outside the safe house. Each step was a testament to her resilience and the care she had received from John and the people who had supported her. She began to write in a journal, documenting her journey, her fears, her hopes, and her dreams. Writing became a way for her to process the past while looking forward to the future. John continued to visit, though less frequently as Emily grew stronger and more independent. He took comfort in knowing that she was safe, thriving, and learning to trust again. Their bond remained strong, built on trust, respect, and the shared understanding of fear, courage, and survival. Emily knew that while the past could never be erased, she had the tools and the support to create a future full of hope and opportunity. One bright morning, Emily received news that a nearby community center wanted her to speak to young people about courage, resilience, and the importance of seeking help in dangerous situations. Though nervous, she agreed, realizing that sharing her story could empower others and remind them that even in the darkest times, help and hope exist. John accompanied her to the center, proud to see her take such a brave step forward. As Emily spoke to the young audience, sharing her experiences carefully and thoughtfully, she felt a sense of empowerment she had never known. Her voice, once trembling with fear, was now steady, filled with determination and compassion. She looked at John in the audience, and his encouraging smile gave her strength. She realized that her story, though painful, had the power to inspire others, to remind them that courage, kindness, and hope could overcome even the most difficult circumstances. By the end of the session, Emily felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had come a long way from the terrified girl in the shed to a young woman standing before others, sharing her experiences and empowering them to be brave. John felt a mix of pride and relief, knowing that Emily was no longer just surviving, she was thriving. The journey had been difficult, filled with danger, fear, and uncertainty. But they had succeeded. Emily had been liberated from the shadows of her past, and she was ready to embrace a future full of possibility. In the quiet moments afterward, Emily and John walked back to the safe house. The sky was painted with soft hues of pink and gold, the sun casting a warm glow over the landscape. Emily turned to John, her eyes reflecting gratitude, hope, and a quiet strength. "Thank you for never giving up on me," she said. John smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You never gave up on yourself either. That's what matters most." And so, Emily's life continued, free from fear, surrounded by people who cared, and filled with the promise of new beginnings. John returned to his ranch, his heart at peace, knowing that he had kept his promise. Emily had been saved, not just from immediate danger, but from a life of fear and despair. She had been given the chance to heal, to grow, and to create a future full of hope and courage. Though the journey had been difficult, it had also revealed the power of compassion, bravery, and human connection. Emily had survived, she had thrived, and she had learned that even in the darkest times, there is always the possibility of light. And John Harper, the old rancher who had risked everything to protect a young girl, had proven that one person's courage can change another's life forever.